You know how on most Taylor Swift albums, the fifth track is usually the very somber one, the much more emotionally impactful one? Imagine if she put an album out where all the songs were like that. Yeah. Folklore by Taylor Swift. So, this shouldn't really come as a shock. I don't hide the fact that I love Taylor Swift and her music. I think she's one of the greatest working female artists right now in terms of the pop scene. I love how genuine she appears to be. Well, there's debate about how actually genuine it is, but I particularly enjoy it. This is the 8th studio album from the pop princess of Taylor Swift. Folklore came out of nowhere. She basically just said last Thursday, hey, I'm putting out an album tomorrow. Hope you all enjoy. And we're all like, wait, what? There's been no lead up. There's been no hints or little Easter eggs. Like with all of her other albums, there have been all these little Easter eggs and such a big build up and a promotional machine just churning out things for us to look for. There's been music videos with hints about what's going to be on it. There's, social media campaigns to tease little tracks here and there. There was nothing for Folklore. It just came out all at once. So Folklore. Yeah, this is an interesting one. This is probably her most interesting one to date. And on the one hand, I feel like a lot of her albums are a response to something. I don't think we really need to know what the response for Reputation was, and Lover was a response to Reputation's reception. Folklore is a response to the lockdown, to the quarantine, to COVID. And because of that, it's much more heartfelt. It's less of a reaction to other people's reactions and much more how she's reacting to it, how she's coping with it, how she's dealing with not being able to go outside, to interact with her fans, to essentially lose her whole Loverfest, the whole stadium tours that she was going to do with all that. And it's very personal in that sense. And I wasn't I was kidding in a little bit at the beginning of this review, but I wasn't necessarily kidding when all the tracks on here are extremely stripped down and subdued like a lot of those 5th track listings were. And in one sense, that's a great listening experience from start to finish. I could put this on in the background and at no point ever want to get up and turn off the music. All the songs here feel extremely unified and extremely connected with that concept, with that ideology of this very somber, subdued singer-songwriter. There's very little big essences on this album. There's very, very little production work on this. And in the one sense, like I mentioned, it creates a beautiful listening experience from start to finish. But on the other hand, these tracks can get very repetitive, and each track does begin to start to have a diminishing returns of my enjoyment of it as an overall fully realized album. That's the biggest weakness of this album. It does feel a little bit like a collection of demos and not fully realized tracks, but more, this is the idea that I have. I'm going to put it down on a piano or an acoustic guitar and just kind of hum around with some lyrics that will probably make sense. And not all tracks feel like this in terms of the lyrical content. Obviously, The One, Cardigan, The Last Great American Dynasty, Mirror Ball, August, and Epiphany, these tracks do feel like they're much more realized. They just feel like they're not quite as fleshed out. Although my favorite track off this is August, as it's a longer stretch of music, and it really has this beautiful crescendo into this gorgeous end point. It starts off very somber and very quiet with the piano work, but then there's a little bit of production work to pad it out by the end sequence to provide A brilliant listen that's very, very satisfying to the ears. It doesn't feel like just another demo track. Same with The Last Great American Dynasty. I love the lyrics. I love what's being sung about, like the story of this older woman and what she's lived through and how she's been able to accumulate her wealth and how that's really gone. And it's a detriment of like, this is the dynasty that I've had, but today's generation will never be able to recapture that. There's not really this pull you up by your bootstraps and get her done mentality because of the generation that basically bled that dry. And it's a little bit of a bittersweet. It's like, look at my harvest, but because I've milked the land for all it's worth, there's nothing to replant again. And I really, really enjoy that thought piece in this kind of a context. But so many other tracks on here do feel a little bit lackluster. My Tears, Ricochet, Seven, Illicit Affair, Betty, and Hoax don't really feel all that inspiring to me. I feel like they're just treading water. I feel like we're here for much too long, and I'm starting to get a little bit tired. But I also enjoy that Taylor hasn't completely lost her teeth as well. There are many tracks, Betty probably being one of them, but also Mad Woman, Invisible Strings, This Is Me Trying, and The One. It still has that edge that, say, Reputation had that I particularly enjoyed. It has a little bit more teeth into it outside of just your typical singer-songwriter. Like, with the singer-songwriter, you want to have a meaning, you want to have a passion behind it, and these tracks definitely hold such an angsty, what are we doing kind of a messaging behind it without being so bombastic. There's that word again. So in your face. It's able to present these ideas in a very somber setting. And Exile probably, like, it features Bon Iver and is probably my least favorite track. It just feels kind of out of place. Yeah, my biggest criticism of this album, first and foremost, it's way too long for the type of music that she's presenting. This album, this type of music should not be more than 40 minutes. I think she could have easily cut out a good 20 minutes and then focused in her time that she spent with those 20 minutes worth of music, really dialing down and finalizing those 40 minutes worth of music. And when albums are presented like this, I do need a good banger. I really need a good hook. And even though I love August of being a little bit of that hook, I really needed a Look What You Made Me Do, or You Need to Calm Down, or a Ready for It, or a, say, like Paper Rings, or 22, or something that's just like catches my attention and it's got this pump up the jam to really kind of like utilize this, because I understand what Taylor's doing in being this somber approach of music, but I really wanted something to say things are not the greatest, things are blah, but I really wanted that, but things could be better, and here's how we can do it kind of a track, just to finalize everything off. And so that, and because it's so long, all these tracks begin to bleed together. There's no real identity within the tracks. There's definitely an identity between the tracks, and there's a real solid through line, but I wouldn't be able, outside of maybe Cardigan or August, or maybe even The One, to really tell you what other tracks there are on this if I didn't literally just finish listening to the track itself. So yeah, I mean, overall, this is a brilliant album. I've really, really been digging this, and I actually do recommend it despite the faults within it, because even though there's a lot of faults within it, being too long, not having a whole lot of identity within the tracks, I still think there's enough in here for anybody to really enjoy as a crisp background music within the time that we've had. Yes, it does feel a little bit rushed. Yes, it does feel a little bit unpolished, but I think that does add to the uniqueness of this album within the discography of Taylor Swift. So yeah, this one is getting I love it with my whole heart. I'm not going to lie. I really, really do. This one might be one of my favorites of Taylor's, despite the flaws. And even though each of the albums that came before this have better tracks on it, from sitting down and listening to this as a overall piece, I can't help but love it. I really, really can't. She knocked this one out of the park. And being able to like sit down and write an album within a couple of months, that's stellar. That really, really is. And I think if she had perhaps I'm a broken record at this point. I'm a broken record. I'm going to stop it there. What did you guys think of Folklore by Taylor Swift? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Whatever you thought, let me know by commenting down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, you guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.
Cancel plans just in case you call and say